As Vice President Harris continues to dominate the 2024 election, Donald Trump decided to make a bad situation even worse by publicly denigrating America's veterans and putting his campaign in the awkward position of being confronted by even conservative media pundits who are calling them out for their stupidity. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as you can see, the setup's a bit different. I'm actually sitting in my kitchen right now testing out my mobile setup because this week, at the time of recording, or rather next week, will be the Democratic National Convention. So today, at the time of recording, it's Saturday. I fly out Sunday, and I'll be there until Friday. So I want to make sure this whole thing is working so I can give you content during the DNC. Now, having said all that, this is a bit of a follow-up to a previous story that we talked about where Donald Trump stupidly decided to publicly denigrate and humiliate America's veterans. And again, there's fallout from this. Before we get to the fallout in particular, I just want to remind you of what Donald Trump said that was so offensive.
I have to say, Miriam, I watched Sheldon sitting so proud in the White House when we gave Miriam the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's the highest award you can get as a civilian. It's the equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, but civilian version. It's actually much better because everyone gets the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's soldiers. They're either in very bad shape because they've been hit so many times by bullets or they're dead. She gets it, and she's a healthy, beautiful woman. It's
pretty disgusting stuff. So again, this idea that the Presidential Medal of Freedom is better, it's more dignified, it's glamorous because it doesn't go to soldiers and veterans who have been wounded. It goes to beautiful people. Pretty pathetic stuff. And also, by the way, just further emphasis that Donald Trump is either incredibly stupid or in a rapid state of cognitive decline because no sane political actor, particularly somebody running as a Republican, would ever say such a thing. And it's so bad that even I apologize for how de-res the image is, but this is a clip of Corey Lewandowski, whom Trump recently tapped to come back to his campaign. Lewandowski was Donald Trump's campaign manager in 2016. Then he was eventually fired. He was a Trump surrogate until, like, I know while Trump was president, 2018, he went viral for some insensitive comments. This guy is a pure sociopath. He's a disgrace. He has engage in inappropriate conduct with women. I mean, he is just a profoundly despicable person, but he also believes in letting Trump be Trump. That was his mantra. Just let Trump be Trump. And that's clearly what Trump wants. So Trump reached out to Corey Lewandowski and asked him to come back to the 2024 campaign. Corey Lewandowski comes back to the 2024 campaign, and now he inherits this mess from Trump. But let Trump be Trump. It'll be interesting to see how these notions conflict. So he goes on to NewsNation, speaks with a conservative pundit on NewsNation, who is clearly not happy with Trump's decision, Trump's rhetoric, and the overall trajectory of the campaign.
So he's talking about a congressional or Presidential Medal of Freedom that was given to Sheldon Adelson, who's now deceased, and was talking to his wife, a billionaire donor. Forget for a second what he really meant or anything like that. Why, in a time when President Trump is clearly playing defense in the campaign, give the media and give people who don't like Donald Trump an opportunity to say that he compared what a billionaire donor did in an award they received to the most heroic award for valor in America?
You know, it's interesting. When the president awards the honor that only a president can bestow on people, it's not just to the billionaire donor class. We've seen this given to some of those incredible Americans who have achieved the American dream, who have done something so exemplary that they didn't serve in our armed services. And look, I am a military family. My brother was an active duty Marine for 26 years. My father in Vietnam, my grandfather in World War II. So I don't.
Corey, I just want to be clear. You're doubling down on the idea that the Congressional Medal of Honor is much better than the Medal of Honor. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is better than the Congressional Medal of Honor.
No, Leland, what I'm saying is there are people who deserve to be recognized for their incredible work.
We're not disputing that.
But
we're just asking why former President Trump said what he said.
But because there are some incredible people who didn't serve in our military, but they should still be recognized.
Nobody's talking about that. Nobody. Democratic and Republican presidents have handed out the Presidential Medal of Freedom. No one is disputing that it's a high-profile, incredible award. There's no mutual incompatibility here, except the one you and your candidate created. Nobody ever introduced the idea that one was better than the other or anything like that. Donald Trump created an unforced error by once again denigrating denigrating veterans. He created the comparison. These were apples and oranges, these two awards. Nobody went into them thinking, wow, one is better than the other. That wasn't like the notion. Donald Trump introduced that notion without prompt. He wasn't baited into it. He just walked into it because, in fact, Donald Trump has a long reported history, according to his own chief of staff, Mark Kelly, a former general in the United States military, he himself a veteran, saying that Trump has a history of making disparaging, denigrating comments about U.S. soldiers, particularly wounded soldiers, disabled veterans, and the like. This is just another public manifestation of it. So Corey Lewandowski is floundering here, trying to come up with, because what he should say is, you know what, Donald Trump really didn't mean that. I understand how it came off. It was an inappropriate comment. The president apologized, blah, 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 all these things. But of course, that's what a Democrat would do if the Democrat was in that particular situation. Of course, a Democrat would probably never say something like that in the first place, but they would just come out and say, you know what, that was a poor choice of words. That is not what I mean. I sincerely apologize to America's veterans. I was speaking extemporaneously, trying to hype up the Presidential Medal of Freedom. There was no reason to make it a this versus that, or one is better than the other. But Trump will never have the humility to do it. And therefore, his campaign can never do that. That's his own fault. That's a product of his pathos and his pathology. But it was not just Corey Lewandowski. As a reminder, Donald Trump put his vice presidential running mate, J.D. Vance, a Marine Corps veteran, kind of in a similar situation the day before.
We'll do one more then.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. I wanted to ask you, Trump has been getting attacked from his comments at the press conference yesterday about what he said about the top military honor. And veterans have pointed out that, he said that the civilian presidential honor is better than what wounded veterans have received. And I wondered, what do you say to veterans who think that's demeaning?
Well, look, I was with a group of veterans in Pennsylvania yesterday, and trust me, the veteran community is very, very much behind Donald Trump. So, look, what I would say to people is, look, what President Trump said during a ceremony, and I haven't seen the entire remarks, but my understanding is President Trump said during a ceremony that a person who received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, he was saying some nice things about her. He was saying some complimentary things.
That wouldn't have been a problem. You are welcome. You are encouraged to say nice things about recipients of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It was Donald Trump who went out of to make an unflattering comparison to the Congressional Medal of Honor. Donald Trump did that. But again, this is the problem that Trump is leaving his campaign in, because he's floundering, because he's a malignant narcissist, because he only thinks of winners and losers. And it's not enough to have a nice thing or to have an honor. It has to be a better honor, a superior honor. And whatever is the superior honor depends entirely on who he's talking to. I imagine if he were talking to a group of veterans at the time, he would have found a way to suppress his natural, highly reported disdain for veterans to compliment them. But again, this is just how his brain works. I should also point out, J.D. Vance wants to talk about how veterans stand with Donald Trump. Well, actually, many veterans stand with the Democratic ticket because they recognize that the Democratic Party and the Biden-Harris administration has done infinitely more to protect veterans than the Trump administration and Republicans ever do. This is a clip in the aftermath of Donald Trump's comments. The co-founder of Vote Vets, a advocacy group comprised of veterans. This is what he had to say about Donald Trump's remarks on MSNBC.
Trump did it. I mean, he just completely changed the narrative. I mean, for 10 days, they've been after Walz and these little issues about, debates on, did he retire as a master sergeant or a sergeant major? And then Trump comes out there and does what he always does. He completely fumbles the football and demonstrates once again he doesn't understand our community or the United States military. There's only 14 Medal of Honor recipients that are alive from Iraq or Afghanistan today. And he sits there at a conference speaking to Sheldon Adelson's widow. And look, Vote Vets was the 5th largest super PAC for Democrats last cycle. What he's really trying to do is raise money from her. And to try to raise $100 million check He threw Medal of Honor recipients under the bus. He demonstrated once again he doesn't understand our military. But that's kind of his game, right? He uses the military to benefit himself when in reality his real framework for it is, I don't want to go to Vietnam and I'm afraid to go to Vietnam. And that's where we get comments about people who serve being suckers or losers. So absolutely par for the course, completely changes the narrative. Of course, this morning he sent out his public affairs NCO, JD Vance, to try to clean up his mess. And he actually stepped in it and made it worse.
I completely agree. He did. Folks, the fact of the matter is that I understand that Donald Trump is graded on a curve. I understand that the Democratic Party or Republican Party is associated with being the pro-military, pro-veterans party. But Jon Stewart said this famously years ago, just a few years ago, as a matter of fact, when Republicans, Donald Trump's party, obstructed the PACT Act, the act that expanded veterans' health care, particularly those who were exposed to toxic burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan. It used to be a bipartisan bill. And then under Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump's leadership, they were getting upset that President Biden and the Democrats were racking up legislative wins. So they obstructed their own bipartisan bill because they worked initially with Democrats on this bill. Then they obstructed it for cynical political retribution. And then comedian, Daily Show host Jon Stewart had to basically put the pressure on him the way that he had to put pressure on Republicans for 9/11 first responders medical bill during the Trump administration. He had to come out and do it again for military veterans because Republicans were doing the same damn thing, using it as a political football. Neither party is perfect, but the Republican Party, if you want a heuristic, which is pretty accurate, the Republican Party is pro-war. Democratic Party is anti-war or more anti-war than Republicans, but pro-veteran. And the proof is in the pudding. Not only do we have the comparative legislative history between the Biden and Trump administrations, you have these public comments by Donald Trump himself just proactively denigrating America's veterans. They hate veterans. At the end of the day, if you care about veterans, if you are a veteran, you are better off in the hands of a Democratic administration than a Republican administration, and in terms of both rhetoric and legislation. And this just goes yet more, takes it even further to prove it. So I don't know what to say. I can't imagine that that they're going to be able to spin this successfully, and we shouldn't let them off the hook for this. So continue to make this story prominent, continue to demand accountability from Republicans who claim to be pro-veteran, to disavow, to condemn the words of their cult leader, and see if they follow through. But I doubt they will. Let me know what you think in the comments.